In the previous video, we talked about the three jewels. So in the second part of the series, we are going to be talking about the three schools of Buddhism, the Buddha's Four Noble Truths, and the Noble Eightfold Path. Three very important core teachings of Buddhist philosophy. So let's delve straight into it. Now, I can imagine myself on a three-legged stool. The three-legged stool can be made with such fine craftsmanship. Its person who has created it can become a very skilled craftsman. The wood could become of exceptional, fine, expensive oak, birch type of wood. But if any one of the legs in the three stools, if any of the three legs were to be pulled away, I'd fall down the stool and break a bone. Even if it's just one that was suddenly pulled away, I'd fall down and I'd collapse. Now, this is the same thing with Buddhist philosophy. If we don't understand the three schools of Buddhism, our knowledge will be incomplete, like trying to build a three-legged stool, missing the third leg. And so the first school of Buddhism, the first variation of Buddhism, although it is said that there are many variations of Buddhism, as many as there are temples, and there are thousands and thousands of temples, the first main variation of Buddhism is Theravada Buddhism. And the premise, the main point of Theravada Buddhism is it preserves the early teachings of the Buddha that are found in the Pali Canon. So it's not modern Buddhism, but it's trying to, get the early parts of Buddhism and integrate them into modern life. Not trying to modify Buddhism or anything like that, but trying to keep the original teaching of the Buddha just as it is without thinking of any modifications. The goal of this is to gain enlightenment. And the second one is Mahayana Buddhism. Particularly, Mahayana is a later type of Buddhism, and it emphasizes the Bodhisattva ideal, which is the aspiration to not only achieve enlightenment for yourself, but also for every other being in the world, in the planet. And the key practice is to cultivate compassion and wisdom. This is commonly found in China, Vietnam, Korea, and some parts of Central Asia. And the goal is to become a fully enlightened Buddha in order to save all beings. Vajrayana, on the other hand, I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, is a subset of Mahayana Buddhism. And it incorporates more of esoteric practices and rituals and spiritual stuff like that. Tantric methods, and it's aimed at rapid spiritual progress toward enlightenment. It's a little bit newer, and they have mantras, mandalas, daily visualization, and they combine it with meditation and ethical conduct. And in this subset, in this sect of Mahayana Buddhism, those in the Vajrayana Buddhism sect believe that enlightenment can be achieved in a single lifetime if you have the right conditions and if you have the right teacher. This is found mainly in Tibet, Bhutan, Mongolia, certain parts of India. And while all of these three schools of Buddhism differ in style and in emphasis in teaching, all of these schools aim to fulfill the core mission of the Buddha, and that is to reduce suffering for all beings of the world. One day, somebody asked the Buddha, "Lord Buddha, what do you teach?" And the Buddha said, "I only teach two things: suffering and the end of suffering. And so we shall start by touching on suffering." Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh refers to suffering as ill-being to make things simpler. And ill-being is the negativity, the unwholesomeness that we fall into in our lives. It is the suffering, it is the misery, it is the anguish, it is the lamentation. But to truly understand ill-being, we must first look at one of the most important concepts of Buddhist philosophy, and that is the Buddha's Four Noble Truths. The first noble truth is that ill-being exists. It's the classic Taoist yin and the yang. Without the mud of negative experiences, the beautiful lotus flower of positive experiencing cannot bloom. The second one is the origin of ill-being. And the origin for ill-being, the origin for unwholesome state, is the craving for a certain situation to be different than the way it is right now. The reason why we face ill-being, the reason why we suffer, the reason why we anguish in our lives is because we desire for things to be different than the way they are. But the Buddha outlined that it's not just any desire, because if it was any desire, then all of us would just be removing our desires, and the Buddha wouldn't have even taught us in the first place, because he wouldn't have any desire to teach. Instead, the specific type of desire that causes suffering, that causes ill-being, is craving. A strong attachment, a strong desire, a strong greed for things to be the way you want them to be. Think about it. There are two types of people who want good grades in class. The other type of person is so desperate for good grades. He's hungry. He's looking to get that good grades. He's looking to become a ravaging beast in order to take what he wants. And the second type of person also wants good grades, but he has this more diligent, he has this more wholesome and humble intention in getting that good grades. Come exam day, they both get their test results and both of them fail. The other guy who was craving so hard, who was so desperate, he was now down in the depths of misery. But the other guy, he didn't expect anything. He tried his best to get the good grades. Sure, he got a failing grade, but his mindset is more of, I'm gonna try better next time. He has the understanding that every loss is a win. And this is what Buddha calls wise aspiration. And wise aspiration, side tangent, is the good desire. It's the desire that we want in our lives. But the second noble truth is basically just craving. So craving equals ill-being. The third noble truth is about the end of ill-being. If misery exists, that must mean happiness can also exist. And this brings us on to the fourth truth, the fourth noble truth of the Buddha. And this noble truth is also, I'll give you a little suspense here, the third step of the video. Do you remember what I said earlier? The Buddha said that he taught two things. Suffering, that's number one. The second one, however, which we're going to talk about here, is the end of suffering. And the key to the end of suffering lies in the most important truth that the Buddha laid out for us. The path to well-being. The Noble Eightfold Path. To explain the path more thoroughly, I'll be using the GOAT Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh's modified version of the path. The first of the 8 is right view. And right view is the view that is unbiased and is open to all views. The view that is free from judging other people's views. If we are biased and dogmatic to one thing, we close our minds to the other views that might be beneficial and conducive to our good. Now the second is right thinking. And right thinking is the thinking that produces the thinking that produces non-violence, non-discrimination, understanding, and compassion. Because this way we are able to have proper communication with each other, not to cause divisiveness, but to cause peace and harmony and respectfulness and moral character toward one another. Now these two of the 8 that I've just talked about, right view and right thinking, they are components of the wisdom section of the Noble Eightfold Path, or in Pali, Panya. Now let's move on. Right speech is the type of speech that is said with the intention of brotherly love. Would you rather have a friend who has good intentions, who loves you and cares about you, but he's brutally honest because he wants you to grow? Or would you rather have a friend who sugarcoats everything about you? Right action is anything that you do that goes along with non-violence and love for all beings. The third one of this section, or the fifth one for the entire 8, is right livelihood. And it's to make a living, to get a job, to gain food, water, shelter, and daily necessities in a way that is beneficial to all living beings. So terrorism is not a viable option for you to make money. Assassination is not a viable option for you to make money. And all of these 3, right speech, right action, and right livelihood, they are part of the ethics component of the path, Sila in Pali. Now let's go over to the last 3, 6, 7, and 8. 6 is right diligence. Right diligence is the practice of selectively choosing to water the good quality seeds inside of us, the positive, wholesome seeds, and to reduce the negative seeds inside of us, the negative qualities inside of us as much as possible. To be diligent not in watering the seeds of addiction, the seeds of impulsiveness, the seeds of depression and misery, but to be diligent in watering the seeds of compassion, love, joy, moral character, and virtue. The 7th is right mindfulness. Right mindfulness is to be fully present in the moment without being stuck in thoughts of the past nor on thoughts of the future. And the last and 8th one is right concentration. Is it not? Well, Buddhist monk Ajahn Brahm modified it to right stillness. If I hold a water bottle in front of me, the more effort that I put into concentration, the more that the water inside of the bottle will continue to move. But if I place the water bottle down, the water becomes completely still. And this is like the mind. When you put more effort into the act of being concentrated, the mind will become even more disturbed. It cannot be concentrated. When you let go of trying to be concentrated, the mind naturally becomes still. And the quality of stillness that is in the mind is the 8th and last element of the path. Hence, why Ajahn Brahm calls it right stillness instead of right concentration. Right diligence, right mindfulness, and right concentration are components of the Samadhi section of the path, or in English, deep stillness. And I know all of this sounds like spiritual mysticism, but don't worry. The Buddha boiled all of this down into 3 core sections, and we've just talked about them: ethics, deep stillness, and wisdom, which is exactly what we're going to delve deeper into in the next and final part of this series. But there's something that I didn't tell you. The Buddha said that everything he taught would be completely useless if you don't put it into action. Click on this video if you want to learn how to live fully like the 14th Dalai Lama. As always, live in the now, because tomorrow may never come. Bye bye.